Dearest colleagues, welcome to the Vision Straight Masterclass series. I'm Obi Malope, an optometrist and eye care leader or enthusiast all the way from the motherland, South Africa. I'm a soccer fanatic. I'm obsessed with soccer. My favorite soccer team is Liverpool. And in preparation for today, if I had to have a soccer team, a starting 11, and I had to name a captain of this team, the captain of this team will be none other than the incredible Dr. S.S. Johnson. How are you today?
Oh my gosh, you're so kind. I didn't know where we were going with this analogy. I would love to be the captain of your soccer team. Good morning.
Listen, you are next level. You are literally next level. I'm obsessed with everything that you do. If you just breathe on social media, I'm right there, ready to just like your comment or do something because I don't think I've ever met anyone as humble as you. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that. A few years ago, we did a campaign called a Women in Eye Care campaign. When I reached out to you to say, Dr. Johnson, we're doing this campaign, we would love to feature you. I don't know if you remember the first thing that you said to me. You said, oh my goodness, Obi, no, I'm not the right person for this. Then you gave me like a list of people that I need to reach out to feature on the campaign. And I was like, what a leader, what a leader, someone who does not care who takes the credit for getting the job done. And I see it in your work, and there's no way we can have a masterclass series without having the world get to know you. Who's Dr. S.S. Johnson? How did you end up in eye care? So that they too can learn from this incredible human being that I'm sitting across. How are you today?
Oh, I am blessed. I am wonderful. That intro just filled me up, Obi. It is a pleasure. And just like we were talking a little bit offline, it is our first time meeting on Zoom, you guys. So
Crazy.
This is a very momentous day. We need to let this day, be written down in history, the day that two great eye care leaders are meeting across the world. So it is an honor and a pleasure. And I'm just ready to dive into our discussion today.
Absolutely. How did you end up in eye care? Who are you? Where are you from? Which part of America are you based in? Do you mind give us a short, or actually not even a short, please give us an introduction of who is Dr. S.S. Johnson?
Well, yes. So Dr. S.S. Johnson is the HBCU made residency trained community and correctional health optometrist who is currently in Dallas, Texas. But I think my favorite fun fact about myself is that I am not a Texan. Wow. I'm not a Texan by birth. At this point, I have lived in Texas a majority of my life, but originally I was born and raised in Southern California. That is where I don't have my Texas accent or twang because I'm a Californian, y'all. And a lot of people, they don't know that. Even when I was in optometry school, they'll say Essence is from Texas, and Essence is not from Texas. Oh, wow. Essence is actually from California. I'm the oldest of four, so maybe that's where my leadership qualities shine. I was born a leader of the Robinson family. I have two sisters, a younger brother. And basically, it was that scholarship that I got to go to Prairie View A&M, which is an HBCU in Prairie View, Texas, that really just changed the trajectory of my life. I was going to go to school in California. I had already applied, been accepted. I was just going to go to one of our local universities there. And then one day I got a phone call that said, hey, you have been chosen to not only go to Prairie View, but to get a full ride scholarship. And I'm like, no way. Wow. I never even applied to Prairie View. Hopefully that doesn't do anything with my degree, but I never applied to Prairie View. Wow. But yet I was accepted on a full ride scholarship, and just the wonderful parents that I had, they were like, take this opportunity. You can go to school for free. If it doesn't work, you can always come back home. Like, just go and see. And honestly, that kind of started a trend between me and my middle sister. She also went to an HBCU on a scholarship as well. She went to Tuskegee. And then our younger sister, she went to culinary school. And then my brother, he went to school in Montana when my sister was stationed there. And that kind of started my love and just pride for historically Black colleges and universities. I tell everyone it really wasn't until I went to Prairie View, honestly, that I saw what diversity was. A
Wow.
lot of people think like you went to a majority Black school. What do you mean, diversity? Yeah, you guys got to keep in mind in California, I was used to being just one of the few, Black students, one of the few Black students that were in these honors and AP classes. A lot of my friends were like white, Asian, or Hispanic. So going to a historically Black college or university in the South was a culture shock for me.
Wow.
And that's where I learned like there's just so many different types of Black, so to speak, with the true definition of being like African American men or African Caribbean or Latino and things like that. There was just so many different cultures and people from different locations. It was just a very different experience. It was a very educational experience. It was a very humbling experience, but a lot of who I am today and how I see the world was definitely formed in those 3.5, 4 years as a student at Prairie View.
Wow.
And then because of just that same great mentorship and direction, the people who got me into Prairie View are the people who helped speak my names in spaces I didn't even know I needed to be in on my journey to optometry school.
Wow.
And because the president there knew like the deans and the admissions people at the other schools, it really helped when I was trying to choose between, staying in Texas, going back home to California, or visiting a new city and state and going to Philadelphia. And eventually I decided to go to the Pennsylvania College of Optometry in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. And that was just another fun and exciting time with more diverse cultures and a different part of the United States. And that kind of started my journey well into becoming the optometrist that I am today.
Wow. Wow. This is a masterclass. We're going to unpack as much out of you as you possibly can. From that intro that you gave us, one of the first things that you highlighted was that you were born into leadership because you were the eldest of 4 siblings. How would you say you would describe what leadership is to you? Let's start there. What is leadership to you in the world? Let me put it in this way. How was leadership to you when you were growing up? What did you define leadership is? What was leadership for you in your early days of optometry? And has that changed to how you describe leadership today in 2022?
I think growing up, leadership first was always about example. I think always what you think about leadership, to whom much is given, much is required. And I feel growing up, me and my siblings, we were kind of always this example of leadership. It was always like the Robinson kids, they're getting these grades or they're doing this, they're doing that. So I felt like from a young age, we were always held to a higher standard, put in a pedestal, but in just more of an exemplary way, that we were normally the standard of what you should be doing and what it should look like.
Did you accept that narrative? Did you accept it, or were you trying to fight against it? Because some people will tend to be like, I don't want to be under this spotlight or this stereotype, whereas others tend to accept it and revel in that and excel in that. So did you accept it, and did all 4 of you with your siblings sort of like approach it the same way in accepting it or not accepting it?
I will say in general, yes, we weren't like rebellious to the idea. We did kind of accept it. And I think really for us too, growing up in the church, we kind of accepted it as like, it's our birthright, it's our calling. We know like we're the chosen family and that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
So we definitely didn't do anything intentionally to kind of like disgrace that or to knock it. But I also think too, to the point you're kind of making, like it wasn't something that we asked for either, it just kind of what it has always been. And I think that as we kind of grew up, we didn't grow out of it. We did grow more into it. We just learned how to kind of control the narrative a little bit better and really define it for ourselves, like what a leader is. Because I think sometimes when you're giving so much, responsibility, or you're put kind of in a spotlight or held to a high standard, that people forget that you're human. People forget that you have feelings and emotions, that sometimes you don't always want to be on. Sometimes, you just wish that you were the rule and not the exception. I think where it kind of bothers us a little bit is when the example is like, we have to do this because we're held to this standard, but other people don't have to do it, versus we see it as, no, because we're held to this standard, we're setting the bar here. That means everybody else needs to step their game up to meet us, instead of lowering or having a different set of standards because they're just not leaders, or they're just not held to that same regard. So I think that we are definitely collectively as siblings that we like to challenge that notion in a way. Wow. That we're not rebellious against it, but we're more of like, well, we want to challenge other people to step their game up then, to change that mentality.
So then into optometry school, how did, or your early days of optometry, then what was the leadership component evolving into, if I can put it that way?
Well, I think quite literally, it wouldn't surprise you guys that all 4 years in optometry school, I was the class vice president. So you guys may know Dr. Tim Brown. He was the president. I was the vice president. So like automatically, like whether, I can't remember now, of course, it may have been something I volunteered and sought out, but also it may have been like, if people had to choose, it was like I was the chosen one again. So a lot of times, I'm already seeking out or being appointed to or requested for these types of leadership positions. So I very quite literally was a leader in school.
Wow, that is so interesting because I never knew that about you. And if you heard back from my intro when I set up the analogy about a soccer team, you ooze leadership. You ooze leadership, and I guess you attract that which you are. And I guess that made sense, the analogy then that I made, because the examples that you're giving us in terms of how you're defining leadership and how you have found yourself in leadership roles stems to you are born into it. That's all that you know. And you have an awareness that it comes with a certain level of responsibility. So then it takes us back to that third component. What is leadership today in 2022 for Dr. S. Johnson?
I think leadership for me today, I like to say, this is my favorite analogy. So I'm somewhere in between 2 chains, ask me what I do and who I do it for, and Philippians, 2 and 3, that it says, to do things unto others with no selfish ambitions and vain conceit, and hold them higher than yourselves. So for me, that is what leadership is about. I really subscribe to, it's not about the position and the title that one holds. I know some people will be like, ooh, you're the vice president, but I can be just as effective as the secretary, as a board member, as a committee member. I have learned over time, it's not about the title. It's about the role that you are playing and that role that you're playing in the team. I also subscribe a little bit more to kind of like Maxwell's principles, where, a leader is defined by their successors, by the impact that you're making to other people, that, it's not enough to just lead if the people that are following you are still misdirected.
Absolutely.
So, or not empowered to be able to succeed you. I see it a lot of time in some of the other organizations I have. It's like, it's all cool. Everybody wants to volunteer for, these positions. But then when it's time for the next election cycle, we don't have the same excitement, or people are kind of discouraged from the amount of work or responsibility. So I definitely feel like being a leader nowadays is more than just the title that I hold. It's definitely encompasses the example, that I can bring, but also that ability to excite something in other people, to see those pieces of leadership qualities or pieces of myself in them, but also to, encourage them and empower them to lead as well, to step up and take charge or to even succeed some of the things myself or other leaders are doing.
Wow. Wow. For someone with that in-depth approach to leadership, who takes on the responsibility the way you have for such a long time, the enemy attacks us because you ended up mentioning the aspect of how faith plays a role in your life. So what moments in your career did you fail as a leader? And I put that in inverted commas because we learn from our failures. But where have you experienced moments of messing up, not doing it the way you would have wanted it to do it, or things not turning out the way you had hoped or prayed that they will turn out? And how did you navigate overcoming those challenges using your faith, using leadership when things did not work out? Do you mind giving us practical examples? Because there are people that are going to be, or that are watching this, and they want those tangibles that they can take back and say, you know what, I'm approaching my leadership journey differently. And what Dr. Johnson said resonates with what's in my heart currently. So do you mind unpacking that for us?
Yeah, I think for me, my superpower and also probably my Achilles heel is my ability for words. I was that student that always got in trouble for talking. I'm the person also, with a very expansive vocabulary, so I know that for me, the power is in the tongue, and you have that power to, build up and also to destroy.
Wow.
And I am really learning how to communicate effectively as a leader. So communication is one part of what you say, but also, is probably more parts of how you say it and how it is delivered and interpreted. And I think that as leaders, and I mean, just people in general, that we should really be mindful of how we're communicating. And that comes up in different ways. So with the advent of social media, really being mindful of what you're posting and how you're saying it. I'm a firm believer that when people are especially communicating in writing, there is a negativity bias in society. So you have to be careful, how you're even writing things to this day. An email written in all capital letters or even all lowercase letters connotes, a certain type of tone and professionalism to it. Making sure that you're mindful of your audience and, being formal when you need to be formal, or when you can be a little bit more casual, that you're there. But I think what I'm also learning as a leader is kind of that sandwich technique that we hear a lot of. Like, how are you able to be effective without using, those very harsh or damaging words? I had a friend tell me, she was like, I pretty much know how to tell people about themselves using all positive words. And I'm like, say what? Come again,
Yeah.
And I know for me that I can annihilate people with my words, but I can also, really excite people with my words as well. And I definitely do subscribe that, life and death are in the power of your tongue, metaphorically, literally so. So really just learning how to be an effective communicator in person, on paper, on social media, to make sure, what you are trying to convey is exactly how it's supposed to be perceived. And making sure, that anything that you say, whether it's spoken or in writing, that it's a good reflect of you, and that you never have to literally eat your words or regret your words. That, my word is my word on all ends. And sometimes I said what I said, and then, other times there are things that need to be said. So I think that that is a very important piece of leadership, but also a very important skill for people to kind of continue to work on and hone in on over time.
Wow. You sound like someone who was conscious about their reputation. How important has that been for you? In our industry is very big and extremely very small at the same time. So one thing that you do wrong, your reputation can be ruined very easily. And one thing that you do right, your reputation continues to be harnessed and it grows from there. How have you sort of like, or what are some of the things that you were intentional about when it came to building a reputable brand for yourself within the eye care industry?
Yeah, I think this branding piece, has taken on so many different levels because we have our social media presence, we have our actual physical presence, we have our personal and professional presence. So it's like, how do you marry all of those pieces? And, kind of in the words of our very good friend, Dr. Daryl Glover, everyone's favorite optometrist, it's really about those, those relationships that you build. So I think that what has really helped me and what I subscribe myself to is that I get to know a person, a place, a thing, a company, an organization for myself.
Wow.
Like you can hear what other people say about it. And I try to do my own homework on dispelling what the rumors are and confirming what the authenticity is. And I hope that people do the same with me as well. That I would say, make sure that you define your own truths for yourself, but that you also find your own truths for yourself. Because it's very easy, for people to say, well, I had this relationship with OB and it was this, but like, it's very quite, it is a thing that me and you can have a totally different, relationship. And that I really encourage people in general, but especially in our industry, to not just go with the majority, to really try to find out about people, places, things, companies, and organizations for yourself first before you make any opinions or, have any comments or things like that, because I have definitely been pleasantly surprised when I have done my own relationship building, my own homework about different aspects, particularly in our industry, and really getting to know people, companies, all of those things, just with my own time and developing a real organic, relationship with them.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Speaking of then those relationships, what's easier? The mentor-mentee relationship where you are now essence and you are lifting others up? Is that relationship easier? Or is the relationship with your colleagues, your peers, whom are at the same level with you, easier? Or is it the relationship where you find yourself in environments where you are the newbie in the block, where you are now in the midst of people who have paid their dues, who have already gone before you, who have already achieved the things that you are aspiring to? So the leadership or the relationships that are above you, same level with you, or where you are now pulling the next one up, which one is more easier to develop, maintain, harness?
Yeah, I would have to say this is one of those, like, who do you want to marry? Who do you want to kill? Who do you want to like kind of questions? I would say though, for me, and especially with like the work that I do with the Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club, my mentor-mentee relationships are my heart. I just came back from Vision Expo in New York, and I had a lot of fun opportunities to engage with the students. And it's not that, oh, they hang on every word, but when you see so much of yourself in them and you're able to be in that position now to impart like the wisdom or to just give them some sort of context and make them feel like they're not alone, those are really my most fulfilling relationships that probably come with a lot more ease, just a lot more candor. I feel like the students are always like, man, Dr. Johnson, like, they kept telling me like, you were so real. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, so real. They're like, just the way that you convey the information and relate to us, like you don't sugarcoat anything. You, of course, we're very vulnerable in sharing your own stories. Like a lot of the times I share with the students that one of my biggest challenges in optometry school was that my mother passed away from cancer when I was in school. That was a big obstacle for me, but also, using it as motivation to continue on, to come out and to be the doctor that I am today. And just being a part of her care really gives me a different level of empathy when I work with my patients and when I communicate with the public and things of that nature. So I really, really love, my mentor mentee relationships. I love connecting with the students, whether it's virtually, now that we can do it more so in person. Dr. Glover and Dr. Ramsey, they were laughing at me. I love giving good hugs. I definitely like subscribe to that power of a good, deep 20-second hug to like connect.
I'm looking
with
forward to
people.
a hug from you, by the way,
Yeah.
because I'm a hug.
I was hugging everyone. They were like, Dr. Jackson. I said, I just love, one of the persons even said, they're like, how come when I hug you, I feel like I'm confessing all my sins or talking to my, like, I just love connecting with people. And I mean, and some of that also goes with my colleague relationships, with the other relationships, but my favorite is just a good student and hearing their stories and just being that listening ear, but also being that point of not really telling them how it needs to be done, but really showing them where the light is on the other side of the tunnel, or where some of what they're experiencing isn't, uncommon, even though it shouldn't be the norm, it's not uncommon, and kind of giving those pieces of wisdom of kind of like how I handled that, because I did have, even though things may look all great on this end, there were a lot of just challenges and struggles that I had as a student, and even that I still have, as a professional, that, you know, the common thing that gets repeated to me is that it's never going to be easy, but you can do it, and you will do it, and you are doing it, and that's what I just love to impart on them, that you can do it, you are doing it, you should be doing it, especially in a world where sometimes we're told what we can't and won't and shouldn't be doing.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I love that. That is so powerful. And it speaks to that aspect of leadership that you mentioned earlier on, is that the true essence of leadership is who is coming after you, that you are lifting up to take over the baton from you to go even further. So I absolutely love that. Speaking then of the relationships with peers, or those that of people that have literally gone before you, you seem to collaborate with a lot of your peers. You collaborate with different organizations, companies. You're involved in multiple organizations, if I can put it that way, whether it's in your personal capacity or through the different organizations that you are involved with. How did that journey begin for you? How did that journey begin for you? And what are some of the challenges that you have found along your journey when it came to speaking engagements? When do you get paid for what you commit yourself to? When do you not get paid for it? How did you build up your brand in relation to the engagements that you were doing outside of just being an optometrist within the optometric practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part about that was this was probably one of the positives of the pandemic.
Wow.
It definitely had me kind of reassess, just what I was doing personally and professionally. There's a lot of things that I've always been a very active and engaged person. Probably not so much in the beginning with the eye care industry. I was doing a lot of other things with like my sorority and with the HBCUs, or with just other organizations. But with the pandemic and having more time to be on social media and engaging with colleagues on social media, getting students, I had started a more professional Instagram page, so to speak, and that kind of like was the start of like, hey, let's brand, Dr. Essence Johnson as a doctor, because I had an experience where in just a personal circle, they were trying to take an inventory of who's a doctor. And then like they forgot my name, and I felt some sort of way. I was like, y'all know I am a whole doctor. So maybe I am not doing something right. So that really made me want to step up just that brand and that aspect of me on a different way and really leverage it. So it opened up the doors, to me meeting you and having all of these student pen pals that I started having, and then reconnecting with colleagues that we may have been close, but just time has happened. And having those opportunities to really, engage in the online communities and talk and kind of see what the need was. And that's where I got reconnected with Dr. Glover and introduced to Dr. Ramsey. And we kind of took Black eye care perspective from just a social community, and we formed it into our whole nonprofit known as Diversity Perspective. And from there, that has kind of been my launch pad from where I literally took my career off of autopilot. Wow. And began to like actively and passionately pursuing my purpose, pursuing things. I was going back through just like social media feeds where people were like, hey, Essence, you need to have a club. Hey, Essence, you should have a mobile clinic. Hey, Essence, you should be doing this. So it's really like kind of all those ideas or thoughts that I literally like pushed into a corner somewhere and was like, no, like, I don't have time, or it's not the right time, or I really don't know what you're doing with this information. But over these last couple of years, where people may see like, who's this new kid on the block, or everything's happening so fast. For me, it's like, no, this is like a decade of thoughts and dreams and information and encouragement. Like finally having the time and the place and the platform to grow and to breed and to be able to cultivate all of this. And it is manifesting, as Black Eye Care Perspective. It's manifesting as the Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club. It's manifesting as, Dr. Essence Johnson, this optometrist who is now, a speaker and an advocate and an advisor and a mentor and all of those things. And really being able to put my, of course, career passions with some of the more personal things that I've been doing in my need and desire to, uplift STEM professions and to be part of more diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. It has just been a very fun time of what happens when you kind of stop doing things in the shadows and start speaking a little bit more out loud, which I think is kind of ironic for me because I told you I love to speak, I love to talk, but when I think of it, there was a time where I kind of intentionally and unintentionally silenced my voice, and I kind of found it again over these last couple of years. And this is kind of what happens when now you speak up for yourself and you advertise for yourself and you just let your thoughts and your intentions being known. And yes, I've been working with a lot of companies that are bringing me on, as a thought leader and as just a change agent and as a consultant. And it's been very, very fun working with a lot of the eye care companies in particular to really promote and advertise the profession of optometry, and to be able to do that specifically, to students of color, and even more particular to students at historically Black colleges and universities as well.
Wow, that's powerful. We've got audience members from different parts of the world. And some of them, as they're listening to how inspirational you are, they're busy Googling what is Black Eye Care Perspective, what is Pre-Optometry Club. Do you mind just giving us a backdrop for those people that are shockingly don't know what Black Eye Care Perspective is, just to give us context in terms of how did that all come about and what is the purpose and the vision of Black Eye Care Perspective and the Pre-Optometry Club?
Yeah, so myself, Dr. Essence Johnson, my classmates from the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, Dr. Daryl Glover, Dr. Jacoby Cleaver, Dr. Tiffany Humes, and of course, Dr. Adam Ramsey. So himself and Dr. Glover, they co-founded Black Eye Care Perspective, which was really a space to help bring and cultivate and foster relationships with Black eye care professionals in our industry. During the pandemic and after all of like the racial unrest and injustice, we were like, we want to do more. We are hearing, that we need more Black doctors. We're hearing that there are adverse health outcomes that are disproportionately affecting our minoritized communities. What can we do? What can we do, especially knowing that we are the future of this profession? If it's anyone's job to advance it, we are now in that position in our careers where we are those doctors. So
Absolutely.
what is it that we're going to do? And Dr. Cleaver, I think we all have different versions of the story, but it literally probably was like, hey, let's join, Dee and Adam on this mission. Hey, let's turn it into an actual nonprofit. But we had so many students reaching out to us on like our social media, wanting, just advice and direction. And we went to the ASCO website, which is the Association for the Schools and College of Optometry. And we were like, let's register a club. Let's make a club. So the Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club is the first nationally recognized club from the Association of Schools and Colleges in Optometry. It is virtual. It encompasses people all over the nation. Students as young as high school, all the way up to getting ready to enter optometry school or they're in optometry school. We meet on the 13th of every month. And it is our space to just bring people together, where our club differs from other pre-optometry clubs is one, even if you're part of a pre-optometry club or other clubs, you can join ours. It is free. And it's advised by real life doctors of optometry, and not only that, doctors of color.
Wow.
So the students are able to get, that inside scoop of optometry school, just the journey, just the ups and downs of navigating your 20 or 30 something year old self, from people who literally lived it, breathed it, got the diploma and the t-shirt from it. And it has been just a very fun experience on that end, where we have grown the club from 1 member to 5 members to we're over 110 members. Tonight on April 26th, we're having our signing day. This is our second time doing it, where we are given an opportunity to celebrate and recognize those students that were a part of the cohort. And they get to announce, just like they do in sports, where they're attending the schools and colleges of optometry. And then the other piece to Black Eye Care Perspective is our community piece. How are we interacting with one another? I think it's an amazing opportunity. This is honestly how I got to meet OB. We are in totally different parts of the world, but we have this WhatsApp chat that unites, all eye care professionals from all over. And it's been just a very fun experience too, as the world opens up and as we're going to different events. And we see it in the chat all the time where someone's like, hey, are you here? Or
Absolutely.
now that the world is open up, people are taking pictures. And I was at Vision Expo and I'm like,
I didn't see
someone's in here right next to me. So I think it's a different experience, because a lot of why Daryl and Adam started Black Eye Care Perspective is because they went to a conference and they felt like they were the only ones there. Not only did they felt it, they were, the only, doctors of color there. And now during this pandemic time, we've had time to kind of speed date each other, pen pal with one another, collaborate and converse with one another. So it's really just bringing a more unified, profession, especially in our Black eye care space and community. And we've been working on just other initiatives to let the world know who are Black eye care providers. There's a lot of times I do a lot of these pitches and things, and the first thing I look at is if people have glasses. If they have glasses or not, then I'm asking them when was their last eye exam. And then of course they're going to tell me they never seen a Black eye doctor. And a lot of times just in talking, I am their first experience of a Black eye doctor. So we want to change that narrative. We want to be, I always say we are responsible for marketing our profession. So we want to be able to put more diverse examples of what practicing optometry looks like, educating people all over the world of how expansive our profession is, worldwide and globally, but also in ourselves, building this community and this network of, just friendships and connections, as well as we also connect our minoritized communities with our services. And if not with our services particularly, just letting them understand that importance of their eyes and why they need to be seeking eye care and who and how they're able to do that. So with Black Eye Care Perspective, we kind of touch on all of those points. We have that student piece with our club and with other initiatives that we're working on, the community piece, and then, internally us as eye care providers, connecting all of those dots, from California all the way to South Africa to Texas to everywhere. And it's been just a very amazing experience to to just connect with all of you.
You have absolutely no idea how powerful Black Eye Care perspective is in terms of the work it does. South Africa has a population of about 58 million people. There are 4 optometry schools, and between the 4 optometry schools, there's a total of about, if I look at just the final year optometry students, about 150 final year students from all 4 optometry schools. And from that 150, I would say, and these are like 2020 stats, if I'm not mistaken, half of them were Black students.
Wow.
So you could imagine from 150, only 75 were Black students. And a lot of those Black students, or when they become optometrists, they don't necessarily work in upmarket urban areas. I myself, when I qualified as an optometrist, I worked for about 7 years in an area where I was the only Black optometrist for about a 7-year period. So every single time, people will come and ask me, where did you qualify? Where did you qualify? So that in their mind, they can reference, did I come from the right optometry school to meet the criteria that will say, yes, I'm qualified enough to examine their eyes. So when you guys set up Black Eye Care Perspective, it has helped us so much here in South Africa to change the narrative with regards, the majority of the population here in South Africa are Black. And yet where they go for their eye examinations and all their visual needs, they're not necessarily being seen by a Black doctor. So I had to even step away from patient care to get involved in initiatives that can help the next Black optometrist to take up position, to take up space in areas where predominantly there were no Black optometrists in those areas. So your guys' work is impacting the whole world, basically. So I'm very, very inspired. And I can't wait for 5 years later, 10 years later, when we look at the testimonies of the people that have been impacted by BEP and the Pre-Optometry Club and what they become in the industry. So kudos to you. With all these activities, how much time do you still practice? When do you have the time to practice? And I know you are also a mom and you've got a family. So when do you have the time to be an optometrist, Dr. Joyce?
Oh, that's a funny question. I was doing an interview before, and that's what they asked. They said, what is the work-life balance? You know, when do you turn off optometry? And I said, what if for me, it's optometry all the time? I mean, I love my profession. But yeah, I am married. I have a husband. We have a daughter that is going to be 6 and she just started kindergarten. I have a son that is 3. So it's definitely fun and exciting times. I will say that for me, it's not about turning something on or off. It's really about, you know, how can you kind of coordinate and complement all of the different things. So I am very intentional, I would say, on, you know, the additional positions that I take on. I do work in a hospital setting. I work in a community health clinic and sometimes go to the jail. So that is a Monday through Friday, you know, 40-hour work week job. But really being able to kind of intertwine and leverage the different things that you're doing to not have to always pick and choose one over the other.
Wow.
And I will say, I think I do a pretty good job of that. My daughter, now that she's in school, at least a couple of times, I love it when she comes and tells me, guess what? They asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up. And I was like, what do you want to be when you grow up, girl? She's like, an optometrist. That's an eye doctor. I told them that. And I'm thinking like, yes, it's working, you know?
Wow.
And they just get so excited. So like kind of what you're saying, what's happening just, you know, globally is the same thing, which is even happening locally in our homes, that because we have these platforms, because we've been more visible, you know, in media and spaces, it's like, it is amazing to see my kids growing up and they're not going to be, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years old saying they never saw a Black doctor. They can name and list off a bunch of Black doctors all over the world. So it's like, even just having those influences in our homes, it is changing the narrative. It is making our kids think differently. It's, my daughter, the mini marketer, on an elementary school campus, telling people about, her mother and all of her mother's doctor friends, or you need to get your eyes checked, or giving them just even to be 5 and to be able to say optometrist, I mean, is amazing. So I think for me, everything kind of is a melting pot.
Wow.
And the most that I can kind of like overlap and intermingle, and then definitely having those downtimes, but I definitely find a way to always kind of mix my personal and professional life, and that helps bring me balance and it helps bring me joy.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. Your approach to patient care, um, with everything that you're doing, with your mind constantly being in this leadership, making a difference, adding value, taking the industry to a whole different dynamic, how do you approach patient care? And that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, at the end of the day, we have to build credibility in, let's say, 3 aspects: academic, clinical, and business, so that when we're standing in front of people, influencing them, changing or transforming the way they do things, we've got the capacity that we have built over the years. So how do you approach patient care, and how do you build capacity or credibility from an optometric point of view in your day-to-day journey?
Yeah, no, I think the branding is important. It doesn't matter what health setting. I know some people think, oh, you're in community health. That doesn't matter. I mean, just as much as when I was in private practice, my patients do research. They may do a quick, Google. They may go see what the word on the street is. So I do think that it's very important, even outside of, the star ratings that people may see, but that when people Google your name, they see content, they see substance behind it. Our patients are looking at that too as well. I think we're doing a lot more of this work and sitting on advisory boards, and the conversations that we had too, I really learned, we talk a lot about, biases, and I'll give you guys the short version of it. Like, spoiler alert, we all have biases, and they're not necessarily bad things. It's the way that we navigate the world. It's the way that we categorize things. But I think sometimes, even before we get to, racial or gender biases, that just for efficiency, sometimes we're not giving all of our patients all of the options or all of the information at one time. And I've really been even more cognizant of my tone with my patients, my time that I spend talking to them, and the amount of information that I give. Very early on in my profession, um, it really bothered me when patients would come and say, I was never told that, or the last doctor didn't tell me that. So I have made it a particular challenge for myself, is that I don't want anyone to ever see Dr. Johnson and say that she didn't tell her that. If anything, as we know, I probably told them more than enough and gave them a lot to think about. But that is like my biggest secret. Again, my biggest weapon when people ask, especially I work in a place where my patient base is predominantly Black and Hispanic. So I'm in a very unique and fortunate situation where I am the doctor to a community that I belong to and that can identify with me. So when people ask, ooh, that must be challenging, how do you communicate with your Black patients? I tell them that I take the time and I talk to them, that my biggest tool isn't that I treat them necessarily any differently clinically, but all of my patients, I make sure that they're educated and that they're informed, and that, like my daughter, they're able to pronounce, the conditions that we're diagnosing them with, that they are educated on, the short or the long-term consequences or effects of these conditions. So it is very important with me, has kind of been our theme today, to connect with people, to talk with people, to, even if we only have 15 minutes or 30 minutes, to have that connecting piece. And it's been very exciting over the last 8 years in this particular mode of practice, the relationships that I've built. Or it's been funny because a lot of my patients, they remember their last eye exam by what baby I was pregnant with at the time. So if they're still talking about my daughter, I'm like, uh-oh, we missed a few appointments there. If they're mentioning my son, so it's been even fun to like be able to grow in those aspects, that I was able to start in a practice where I was single, then became married, and then have kids, and they've been
So are
along
there
that
more
journey.
babies? Are there more babies on the way?
Nothing to announce or to report. But it has been very interesting to kind of mark my patients, eye exams with my children's milestones, and to have them know that piece of me, and for me to also know that piece of them as well.
Wow. Okay, before I even ask that question, I didn't want to ask this question, but this is a masterclass at the end of the day. So I'm trying to find the words to ask this question as politically correct as I possibly can. First part of the question is, did the racial tensions that took place in 2020 help optometry to some degree to accelerate what Black optometrists can be able to come and do in the industry on a global scale? Would you say they sort of like fast-tracked that which would have taken longer? Or I don't know how to ask the question, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to ask you in terms of the racial challenges and tensions that took place in 2020 that the whole world was shockingly observing play a major role in fast-tracking the call to duty, the call to action, the taking up the responsibility approach that a lot of Black doctors ended up doing, which would you say they wouldn't have necessarily done as quickly had that not taken place? I hope I'm not getting in trouble with anyone by asking the question the way I asked the question.
No. I think you said it perfectly. My answer is, it's the law of timing. The reality is, what we're experiencing now is not necessarily new, sadly. There there are things that we've been fighting on for over 50 years, for over 100 years. And I think that those things came to a head again, very publicly, playing out in the media very openly, where it, for many people, it may have been their first time seeing it with their own eyes, where some of the stories we may have heard before, back when it was like Martin Luther King or Rosa, those are just stories to us. A lot of us didn't live or experience that, or a lot of the people who did live or experience that, they may not be here to tell or share that story.
Yeah.
So I do think that we're in a very unique time where we may hear like, oh, they tried to do that before, but I think that things are different. Things are different as in, it's X amount of years later. Things are different because of the generation that is now assuming control or that are in control. And so we can articulate things a little bit differently and show, a different, I do feel like a different prioritization has now been placed, that now people are making it more of a priority to talk about, just race and culture, to examine, the things that we have been historically doing. And some people a little bit quicker than others are taking that challenge to, let's maybe not necessarily right any wrongs, but let's write a different future. Let's do something differently. Like, we can't change the past, but we can acknowledge that it seems like the past or history keeps repeating itself. So how can we build and create a different type of future? And I will say that there are things specifically in these last few years, and in particular to the eye care industry, that haven't been done before, or that are now being done differently, or now has a different push and focus behind it. but it also takes the timing, it also takes the context, but it also takes, a group of key leaders and people and organizations to work together to push the needle forward. So I will say, yes, just like the pandemic, while unfortunate some things are, it made for good timing, good platform, that ability for people to kind of assess and then, not necessarily react, but to start just enacting things, to start implementing them, and to just start acting, now, and acknowledging that maybe before we just did not put the focus on it, not necessarily because we didn't think it was important. It wasn't the focus or the priority at the time. So no, I do agree that this time has created a lot of opportunity, and that many individuals and organizations are really leveraging that opportunity to advance our profession in particularly, and to really bring about a different type of change, which is exciting to see and is exciting to be a part of.
Wow. What inspires you?
What inspires me? I mean, I'm a very passionate person, kind of naturally. It almost doesn't take too much, but it is very inspiring to know how one voice can be so powerful. I think that is inspiring. I think where my inspiration comes definitely is driven by if I could just touch one person, and to be able to see how, as one person, I'm able to touch one person.
Wow.
And also in hoping that I am encouraging that one person to now touch another one person. And I think that when you break things down on such a very small scale, of course, it seems doable, it seems tangible. You're able to see those advancements, you're able to celebrate those wins. But I think that that's what's very inspiring, but also encouraging and empowering, that one person, one entity could, be that catalyst, that domino that just propels change forward. And I think that that's been very, very just inspiring and encouraging to me, that my voice matters, that our collective voices matter, that in general, we matter, not just as a person, as a doctor, but as a profession, as an industry, to really start collecting those tiny voices and making them a big collective voice, and showing that we matter on so many different levels, even just to make optometry matter. I think I'm just as passionate of, advancing Black doctors in the Black community as I am just advancing optometry as its minority position in healthcare and kind of in the world. So that has been very inspiring to me, that one voice can be heard, and it can, be a change, but also be a catalyst to start bigger changes.
Wow. Every time we do these master classes, every time I'm always thinking to myself, this masterclass that I've just done today, it's the best that I've ever done. And then you get to the next one, and then you're like, wow, the learning process that I'm going through, then that the rest of the community that is tuned in is going through, it's absolutely out of this world. I don't know how to thank you. I can't wait to meet you in person, because you're like the captain of my team. It's like, you are an incredible human being. Throughout everything that you've been saying, you love people, you love making a difference, you love the industry, you're passionate about making a difference. And that is something that rubs off over everything that you touch. You can see it with how people gravitate towards you, how people draw towards you. So I wish you all the best. Where can people connect with you? What platforms, websites that people can connect with you, Dr. Johnson?
Well, thank you, Obi Malopi. Thank you for the time, for the platform. And I know our day is coming. We'll get to have the best hug ever.
Absolutely.
and just really get to embrace and encourage one another. I am looking forward to that day. Everyone, they can connect with me individually at www.dressencejohnson.com or follow me at Dr. Essence Johnson on Facebook and on Instagram. But you can also follow our journey as Black optometrists and as we redefine the color of the eye care industry 1% at a time at Black Eye Care Perspective. So www.Black Eye Care Perspective. We are on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Black Eye Care Perspective. And if you are a student, no matter where you are in this world, that are interested into joining this wonderful profession and want to be in a community of like-minded individuals who want to help you on this journey and make sure that you not only survive, but thrive, join the club at Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club, or as we affectionately like to call it, at BEPPOC.
I'll make sure to put all these links on the comment section when we share this link. But wow. What do you want to be remembered for, though? I never asked you that question. I don't think I've ever actually asked anyone that question. What do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh, what do I want to be remembered for? That gave me like chills, Obi. Like, I don't know. Is that something that one defines, or is that like what the world defines for me? Like, what do I want to be remembered for? I think on a personal level, I want to be known, as a woman of value and of character that, never left anything unsaid. I watched one of my favorite shows, Pose, and when Pray Tell had passed away, he left a token to everyone, but for his closest confidant, he didn't leave anything. And everyone was like, oh my gosh. And she said, it's because we never left anything unsaid.
Wow.
And I think that ultimately, that's what I want to be known for. I want to be known that I was never the one who left anything unsaid.
Wow. Now I'm getting chills now. Listen, this has been absolutely fantastic. Wow. I'm lost for words. And I'm just lost for words. I know that I have to stop, but I don't want to stop talking to you. It's like crazy. But everyone, thank you so much for subscribing to the Vision Straight Masterclass series. It's been an absolute pleasure seeing how people are responding and receiving this masterclass series throughout all over the world. And if you're not connecting with us on the different social media platforms, make sure to do so. But most importantly, make sure to connect with Black Eye Care Perspective and Black Eye Care Perspective Pre-Optometry Club, because it's going to change your approach to how you see eye care as a whole. And connect with Dr. Johnson. She's an incredible human being. Till the next episode, take care, everyone.
Take care.